Who knows? We might be related. I love it. Lowry without an E. Very good. Hello, everyone. Thank you. And, we've had a really fabulous day filled with great sessions. I am just simply honored to be able to share our journey with you. So we're going to be talking about navigating the unknown. Two critical characteristics that I think are super important in this conversation. I'm going to keep reiterating, and that's resiliency and decisiveness. So let's get started. First and foremost, I represent a law firm of about 1,000 attorneys. Now, if you've never worked in a law firm, I want you to know that we have almost 500 owners. So let's sit on that a bit and let's think about how hard it is to think about some of our initiatives as we push that forward. And that'll be part of our data governance strategy as we talk about it. What I'm really proud about is last year we were named in Financial Times list of top 25 innovative law firms. That's a pretty big deal to our team. And I would be really honest with you and remiss if I didn't say it, that we could not do this without a fabulous team that we call Information Services. From IT to Incubator to Information Resources, Litigation Services, and our Enterprise Business Solution, this team is about 120 plus strong. I actually have 4 here today, and I did tell them because Cleveland did it, so Cleveland Clinic, you guys have to stand up as well. Dilip Samasikara, Mario Jessic, Sheila Neely, and Kelly Balmer are here to join us, so please, round of a hand. They represent some key players inside of this process on our data journey, and our data journey goes back far, but I'm going to first pause before we get there and just talk a little bit about Incubator. One driving force behind the strategy that we're going to talk about is our need to adopt and innovate on emerging technology. Last time I spoke in 2020, we talked about a law firm usually not at the top of the list for being the most innovative. In fact, many years ago, and still today, I look outside of the legal industry and I look at peers and see what they're doing and how they're adopting. And I'm really trying to push the legal industry forward and certainly our firm forward in this journey. So remember, key goal as we walk through this is how can we embrace technology faster and have what we call rapid innovation. And that's what we see out of Incubator through our R&D work that we do. Okay, let's get started. So fundamentally, if you were here in 2020 or at least virtually, we talked about can we build a data-driven law firm? And essentially, it's a tough gig for us. We are a huge knowledge-based company. Everything resides in the minds of our attorneys and staff. We push documents like nobody's business. We have over 30 million documents that sit in our document repository. And we are constantly challenged by the level of complexity of over 40 sub-practice teams, 6 large ones like your litigation, tax, and so on, but 40 sub-teams. And they all speak a different language, and they practice differently. So that's kind of a big deal. So this is a challenge that we've been up to for quite a while. I will say, I think our journey looks a little bit like this. I don't know if this resonates with anybody. Those are people, not ants. And let me say that first and foremost. So I had the privilege of taking my little girls at the time to beautiful Traverse City, just right outside of it is Sleeping Bear Dunes. Anybody been to Sleeping Bear Dunes? All right. So you guys can associate what I'm about ready to tell you. I think our journey, our data journey, was a bit like this hike up a 284-foot sand dune, almost vertical. For me, it looked near vertical, if it wasn't. And we took this trek up. For every foot that you would climb, you would sink 6 inches. This was our data journey, because we were doing something that no other law firm had done, and very few still have done that to this day. So we were forging this path, unknown exactly what was going to be at the top. Although when you got to Sleeping Bear Dunes, they said, hike up to the top and you're going to see beautiful Lake Erie. Well, I got a news alert. You get up to the top, you don't see Lake Erie for another 3 miles. So again, just like our data journey strategy, a lot of unknowns, exactly what was going to happen. And I did use this picture, actually, when we were talking about casting this vision inside of the firm. And I said, while that journey was hard to get up to the top, what I did have was this panoramic view. And it wasn't Lake Erie that was in front of us that was so beautiful. It was actually the lake behind us. And there was Alligator Mound, I think is what it was called. And that came into view. Now I understand why they call it that, because it looks just like an alligator of the peninsula. So the vision was, we really want to strike this balance of everybody having access to data across our organization, and that it was going to help improve our business outcomes. So that's what the vision was. Let's talk about what it took to get there. Much like Sleeping Bear Dunes and climbing that vertical dune, we had to form a great deal of resiliency. We had to learn a lot. We had to keep optimism in mind. I think that's a force multiplier. I didn't make that up, but I adhered to it. And we had to reach out to vendors, and we had to reach out to our people, and we had to really think about how could we craft this. We worked with players like Blue Chip at the time, thank you Scott and team, and now Scaled Sense, who's here. I'd encourage you to talk to them. They've been a part of our journey, and encourage to talk to our team too, because they're the ones there every day helping us use this information and help us forge ahead. Now, decisiveness is that other key characteristic. Because I think without vision and without decisiveness and knowing that there could be 5 doors in front of you and you're not sure exactly what's going to be behind door number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, you have to make decisions. And in hindsight, I could sit here and say, if I started that journey today, our firm would have accelerated so quickly compared to what our journey was prior. But I'm going to tell you in the end why the journey was worth it, and you're going to see it for yourselves. So, resiliency and decisiveness important. So let's talk about a few chapters in this book of this journey so that you really get a full scope of what it looked like for us. In 2017, we looked at Merck's Master Data Management Maturity Model, and we decided that we were going to try to rank ourselves. Yeah, it was stage 1. It was right at ad hoc procedures, no defined process. You know, people were doing different things. We have multiple systems of truth, and that was okay, but now we know. We went quickly into working with another company at the time, Blue Line, in helping us build a data flow assessment of our core systems of record so that we could understand just how bad it was. And sometimes truth hurts, but you got to be resilient. And when we were able to expose that, we knew what we were dealing with. And at the end, we said, all right, a lot of manual process. We need a data governance. Where are we going to start? And I will tell you that that was something that we contemplated for a while about. But one thing I knew is that our head of litigation would come and ask us for things that we simply couldn't give them. Think of this. I need a heat map, it looks like United States, but a heat map of every trial that we've conducted in every jurisdiction across the country. Now, I know there's some in here that are in legal, but for others, that's 94 courts, federal courts, over 13,000 state courts, and there's not one vendor, not one API that can give me all of that information. And do you think that we capture that in a structured way to report that? Nope. So that was a task that really kind of started reflecting like, hey, listen, we've got real business needs for us to be able to articulate that, and we think we could do a lot more with it, so let's start a proof of concepts around litigation. So you'll see as this unfolds, we had to develop our North Star. We had to, from the ground up, and that's what's really important in this first chapter, is that this was not coming from our chairman, it was not coming from our chief operating partner, it was largely a vision because we were the business translator at the time. And we knew that these needs were there, and we saw other industries doing this at a rapid pace, not necessarily in legal, like I said, but we knew we could do something about it. So we started to think about drawing out what are the business outcomes that we need to try to solve for. And I will say, even today, that is still at the very heart of what we do, and I think why we are successful, at least to have some success of what we're doing. Of course, there's been failures along the way. When we talked about building a business capability and data-driven framework, this is what it looked like. So let me kind of break it down for you. At the very bottom, we wanted to use lift and shift information, use APIs to lift external information in and marry it with ours. We have more information than any of our information vendors about us and our clients. But I always had to go to their well. So we wanted to build our own mountain of information, and to do that, we had to figure out how to structure that and pull it in, transform it as we make our way up, and unify it in stage 4. And in level 3, at the time when we were doing this, we were already a couple years into working with machine learning, even in some test projects. And we knew how hard it was to capture data. And we wanted to resolve for that. So there was this middle layer that we knew, like our citizen data scientists could access and do a lot of cool things with. But at the top, I needed to feed this right back for some early wins back to our partnership, to our firm. And so what we did was we started to treat data like an asset. We started to map it out. Not necessarily the financial data. Everybody can talk and use financial data like nobody's business because that stuff is 90% structured. But what we really wanted to focus on was how data used across our practice group, in the minds of our attorneys and the documents, and use that information to help propel and increase smarter decisions through our practice groups. So we mapped these out. We started to look at litigation. What could we get from these other APIs? Things like the courts always can give you who the judge is. They can give you party name. They can give you date, things like that. So we kind of grasped onto that in the very early days. We knew that if we could start to build this mountain of information, that this is what we could provide our attorneys. We could start to allow them to talk with data. We could allow them distribution of information, trends, and allow them to have customizable dashboards to interact with our clients in a really, for our industry, new and creative way. So this meant, from that bottom-up strategy, that we were going to, and this is where we worked with folks like Blue Trip, is building a data pipeline in Azure. We wanted to create a data lake with this information. We knew which providers that we were going to get from the external, but that was a heavy vetting process for us. Won't lie about that. And not every vendor in legal at the time, so this takes us back to 2017, would even offer us an API. Imagine that. So that has changed quite dramatically, and I think largely due to our efforts. So I'm excited about that. Now, this is a contextual data flow in 2019. I thought it might be helpful for you just to see our lift and shift of data on the left, being able to unify that information and pull it in and drive it to any data visualization tool that we needed. And at the time, we had Tableau. We were doing some machine learning, but we also knew that, we're a core Microsoft shop, that if we really wanted to get this into the hands of our people, we were going to use Power BI. But I also wanted the option, because we did contemplate, do we put this in a provider like Domo was one of them at the time? And we wanted control of that transformation for various reasons. And I also wanted to know if technology changes, which we now know it did, when technology changes, would we be ready? And would we be able to accelerate our innovation? So this is a little bit more in depth on the architecture. One thing I just want to point out here, we use the Gen 1 data lake. This is a single instance where we would bring in all of that unprocessed data and transform it and then push it out through analysis services to Power BI. That's going to change here in a minute, and I'll show you how it is. But first, let's talk about business outcomes, because this is really at the point where we're already making our way up that sand dune, right? And we can kind of see some of the business value around us because now we can see the topography of litigation like we never could before. Quick story. Cleveland, it's based here in Cleveland, and it's a 100-year firm, 108 actually, years old. So very conservative firm, salt to the earth, brilliant people, a great culture, and we have expanded to 17 offices coast to coast today. When we go into pitches, I often go into client pitches to tell them about our technology and who we are and how we innovate and all of our great people. They would say, well, we've got this work in California, but you're just a Cleveland firm. So we had no other information to share our experience with. So what we were able to do in the early days was to build visuals like this. This is all of the district courts in California and other local courts as well, sprinkled throughout, and able to show our experience up and down the state of California. You need that experience? We have that. And here's who has been to court and what judge we've been in front of. This combined that external information and our internal information to drive outcomes for us to be able to speak with data about who we were as a firm. Now, in the reverse, we could do that. We get notifications all the time that a suit has been filed against one of our clients, and we want to be the first at it. But oftentimes they're in these small little jurisdictions like Gwinnett County, Who the heck's been in front of Gwinnett County, and what is that judge like? Well, I can tell you exactly the one person in our firm out of 1,000 of attorneys that has been there and what they litigated against. Now, we have since we built this 2018 when it became published. We've been embedding this in a variety of ways through client portals. We've been able to walk into pitches and be able to show clients their entire litigation portfolio, whether Baker represents them or not. That's another key information piece that I should share with you. This is something that we would take into a client pitch. And I had one time somebody lean over the table, I could hear them whispering, and they said, "How'd they get that information?" And I said, "We didn't steal it, it's public. It's public knowledge. Everything in the court's public knowledge, and we pull that in and we process it, we've married it with ours, and we want you to see your litigation portfolio, potential trending of that, and we've helped with M&As, being able to analyze portfolios before they purchase or acquire other companies, and we've been able to help them understand potential areas where they've had increased risk and they need to remedy that." So that's some of the early things that we saw out of the work that we were doing. Just a quick stat, we have about 50,000 cases of Bakers, and we have nearly 200,000 all in. Again, just to kind of show you the depth that we're talking about when it comes to being able to absorb all the litigation in and see the forest from the trees. That really is helpful in litigation. All right, chapter 2. We're doing good. We're walking up this mountain. Okay, sand dune. We're about halfway up. Maybe so hot that we need to stop and take a break, and we were actually forced to because of COVID. COVID prioritized a lot of things. We had to get down to critical mission work. We had to pause because we had some issues that were being forced upon us through vendors. Moving from Gen 1 to Gen 2 was one of them. So here we are, we're just making stride, using this information. Now we've got to level up. And again, reached out to another vendor, Scaled Sense, Brian, to help us, and he did just that for us. We also had other issues like lack of a data governance body. So remember, chapter 1, we are bottoms up. We're doing this for the firm because we know it's the right thing to do and it's going to help propel us forward, but we do not have leadership here setting clear direction, at least not beyond the CIO. So that was definitely a miss, and we knew that we wanted that opportunity if we could get there. So, decisiveness, call to order again. How do we move forward? Let's try to go for data governance from the top, and let's level up Gen 1 to Gen 2, and let's keep moving forward, because we know that there's going to be opportunities as technology changes to use this data when it's better quality, it's more comprehensive, and so on. So we drive forward. This is an image of our new architecture. Slight difference, we're now on Gen 2, and now you have an instance per data product. So this, I think, is going to allow us to be more agile, flexible, rapid innovation. It's going to help meet our goals. A couple of reasons why, because we now have these data products by source, in aggregate, and curated, so that we can use what I love about it. I'll have to be honest, because our innovation group has been heavy on to Gen AI for the past 2 years, is that we can now use these data products and the very embeddings of those data products to help build vector databases. So now we can build new legal AI assistants in specific areas with client consent and often in real-time collaboration with them. So I think that this acceleration has not only helped us evolve with new data sources, be able to rapidly adopt them, but I think it's pushing that undertone of innovation where we're talking about advanced technologies and embracing forms of AI. I love this because we've collaborated on, okay, what does this really save us, this data platform? It saves us time and allows us to move faster. So here it is kind of netted out into some percentages of work that we would do without a data platform and with. The big net here is that we are reducing the amount of time it takes to do some of the more technical things like integrating the data sources and normalizing the data, and we push all of that energy into things like prompt engineering. We know that that's going to be an area of growth for us because we have seen in our side-by-side tests that we can increase accuracy. And if you know nothing about legal, know this. We don't have a lot of room for error. We have to have more precision. So we're pushing technology to be more precise. Vector databases, those embeddings, vector databases, as well as prompt engineering, we think are some major keys for us to increase precision. All right, we're moving on to chapter 3. Remember the other thing that we didn't have? The Data Governance Committee. I was really fortunate and blessed to be offered the role as CIO almost 2 years ago. And I told them what I really wanted when I was interviewing, which was an 8-month interview, by the way. I wanted to build a data-driven firm, and I needed their help from the top. I could help guide them, and I could show them what it was going to look like, but I needed teeth in this. I needed clear direction so that we can do something really magical at BakerHostetler. So I'm proud to tell you that we not only formed data governance in the first year of my CIO tenure, but this year we have met every single month without fail for 9 consecutive months. And we have formed our data governance committee strategy, and this is what we will do. Big key piece is that we're going to increase transparency across the 4 corners of the firm, outside of the CIO. I have friends at the table now. I have our CFO, our CMO, our chief operating partner, our general counsel, and a few others that are helping to make critical decisions across the firm. We review data projects. We also resolve data conflicts. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. But you know, what organization doesn't have that? Our data literacy program is wrapped into this. I knew that was one thing that had to happen, is that we had to elevate our knowledge inside of the firm about even how to use these dashboards and what it meant to speak data. And we also, of course, as a law firm, want to make sure that we're in compliance with laws and regs. So that's really key. We keep a very nice log of all the action items. We had 45 to date. We've completed 31 of them. And we have some that have a little bit longer pole in the tent that we're working on. So we're making some, I think, significant strides in helping our firm understand what it means to have quality data and prioritizing our work to, guess what? Business outcomes. It was one of the first things that we did. What do you, COP, Chief Operating Partner, you, Chief Marketing Officer, want as a business outcome? Those are our guideposts in every single meeting. In building a data-driven culture, we knew that we had to do these 4 things. I actually took this from a Forbes article. I was like, this is brilliant. This is exactly visual. They'll like it. They'll understand it. We need a shift mindset. Unfortunately, I was talking about everyone at the table, not necessarily everybody else in the firm, but the leaders at the firm. What does it mean to have this information and utilize it in this way and ask for things like effective dating, right? Things that we're always talking about. We needed to strengthen skill sets across the firm, and you'll see some of that. Of course, make sure that we have the right tools in place and make sure that the data is good quality. This was a simple example at the Data Governance Committee. I call it DGC for short, so if I slip into that, just know that. But the DGC had a request that came kind of sideways at us, maybe 3rd month in, and they called a meeting and they said, in 8 days, we're going to change the name of our Costa Mesa office to Orange County. Brilliant. Everybody will know that. It makes perfect sense. But hold on a second. We can do that on the outside, meaning our website, but do you realize that that simple request is going to implicate 140 systems downstream, and that we need to think carefully about when we flip that switch, because all of our intake workflows will break? Somebody flipped the switch prematurely, and guess what happened? They broke. Great. This is a real-time example. So we had to back out of that. We had to roll that back, but it is a huge lesson learned for leadership. And it isn't something that just our CIO and the team that works together with me needs to know. Everyone needs to know. They need to understand these implications. So to that end, we've started a data literacy program, and we are teaching people dashboarding. We are teaching them how to speak data, tell data, use data to tell stories. We've been talking about that for a long time in our group. Now we're teaching them how to do that and really help make smarter decisions. We share with them, and these are actual slides, we share with them, key benefit drivers are that we're going to make smarter decisions, we're going to be more effective, and we're going to increase trust and commitment across the firm, because you have a role to play in our organization, secretary, attorney, and this is what it's going to look like. We share with them the common elements of what does data mean? What does it mean to assess, analyze, and draw conclusions from information? And these are slides that we show them too. We try to make it as simple as we can. We show them illustrations of different data elements they maybe never have thought of beyond just financial terms. And we share things with them like data quality is up to not just us, but you as well. You input 90% of information into our systems, and there's a real cost. So I think everybody here probably knows the data quality principle, but just positioning that in front of them, that they are in a shared responsibility role, is, I think, a really important turn for us, and has, I think, made us more effective. We offer them things like data skills library. Right now, it's really simple, dashboarding, but we want that to grow, help them with Excel. We actually have a practice group chair that says, don't touch the baby. That means don't touch anything in Excel, because they may not know how to sort or filter or do a variety of things. So we want to alleviate that and help upskill them as well. So now we're at the end of chapter 3. That's where we're at pretty much current state. I just wanted to kind of reflect on this bi-directional planning. I wish in 2017 I could have gone to the leadership of the firm and said, this is what we're going to build and it's going to look like this and I want your buy-in. Didn't quite happen that way. It happened grassroots, more organic. But now in the position that I'm in, and having all of these great teams, from our cloud engineers to our apps dev, DevOps, innovation group, and so on, we are at a place where we can ask for that and help the firm with it. And I think the value of it is this. I always say these two things will converge and we will hit this really magical place in the middle. And I think we're really close to that magic. I'm going to share that with you here in a minute. But in the end, what does that mean? It means that the Data Governance Committee, or DGC, is going to help provide clear direction, which is what we were lacking. But coming from the bottom up, we were able to use spark creativity and be very flexible and adaptive to what our environment was telling us. You have to listen and lean in a little bit, but I think that you can hear that and accelerate from that. And certainly that's where I think the value of the bidirectional planning has afforded us today. So, last chapter, I want to share with you a little bit of the magic. I had shared, I think, that we are about 2 years into Gen AI, and we have what we call black box studies. And we go head-to-head competitions. We call them bake-offs. Don't laugh. We would play on names, incubator, bake-off, all those kind of things. But what we're looking at is how can we leverage this usually very unstructured information, at best semi-structured, and be able to get more value out of the data that we have than what we could do with the traditional data pipeline. At the heart of this, for the legal industry, there's one document, especially in litigation, one document that is just a wealth of knowledge. So when a file or an action is filed at the clerk of courts, they file what you call a complaint. And the complaint has all of this information. Why the heck you're suing me? What are the facts? What do I want as a remedy? Well, remember, up until Gen AI came out, we could only get this top part, which was largely very structured information coming from the courts. I'd always said, remember this, I'd always said the day that we can harvest what's in the red, it will be a game changer for us. Those are things like allegations. What did you allege? What are the remedies? And what are the supporting facts? Facts, we are very facts-driven in legal. That's what precedents are built on. And that also helps our attorneys create novel legal theory, right, to win cases. This was found in those documents, but it was so manual and arduous for us to harvest that we simply couldn't. But when Gen AI came onto the scene, it was one of the first things I said, please tell me that this is what's going to help us. And I'm very excited to say it is very helpful. We are working now with other large clients, automobile manufacturers, and we are harvesting information for them, and we are showing them the art of what's possible here in a collaborative way. Because jointly with our clients is like the best we could ever do. Because we're learning this at the same time with them, we're trying to mitigate risk at the same time, and so on. So this is very much on the left, a very structured complaint. You can see the kind of blue lettering across the top. That's always my first key, that this has come from the court. And then what we have done, leveraging, I'm pretty sure that this is using GPT 4.0 right now, because that came out fairly recently. We were using GPT-4, and we are able to pinpoint specific information that's really key for our firm to move litigation through the pipeline of settlement or litigation. And when you're dealing with a specific case team and they have 50 cases a week, they need help. They need help to process, right? Not taking their role away, and I would never state that, and I know that they understand from me that I don't think that's gonna happen. They play a very critical role in this whole process to validate, but I'm gonna help get that information to them faster and process it faster for them. So to that end, Brian from Scaled Sense was able to help illustrate for us with our data pipeline. Now, think about this before we key this video up real quick. Think about this. Remember how we always talked about Power BI being like, and Tableau and those things as technology advances? Well, now Azure AI Studio is where we're spending a lot of time looking at those different models and applying them. So now with our data pipeline, what we had built in Chapter 1, in Chapter 4 now, we are looking at how can we leverage those embeddings from those different data sources, creating vector databases, and being able to provide a web interface like this so that our attorneys can literally chat with the case information that they have. So let's cue the video. Thanks. That's a lot of hard work. That's a lot of hard work over years with this team and many others back home, and a lot of hard work with our key vendors and really trying to formalize how can we help with business outcomes. I think that this is only really the tip of the iceberg, because I think while case teams need to interact with this data, I also think we can extract that, use JSON to push that right into our data lake or into other SQL databases that we have for specific case teams and validate it, increase data quality. I mean, it is endless possibilities. So very excited about that. I would say today, if you had to measure us where we're at on that same maturity model that we started with many, many years ago, I think we are at level 3. We are in a stage of enlightenment. We have structured processes, we have clear owners, and a variety of other things that I think help elevate us. But I want you to see what's on the right. These are all of the little steps along the way that weren't so little, that this team took a lot of time to work on, and often not knowing exactly if we were going to hit that mark. And I think that's where the decisiveness, the vision comes in to make sure. So where are we at on the sand dune? I think we are at the top. We're not to Lake Erie, but I think we're close. I can see Lake Erie in sight now, right? We've made the climb. We're stretching along, and I think that we are going to see these two convergence of the top down and bottom up converge and really see some magic happen now. So in the end, if you ask me now, can we build a data-driven law firm? I would absolutely say yes, and I would tell you it's going to take a lot of hard work, but you can do that, and I know that you can do that with your organizations as well. That's all I have for you today. Take questions. Thank you. We've got it. Bill has a question. Please go easy.
So I was going to ask you, once you have the information that's coming out of the cases that have been summarized by ChatGPT, and now it's in structured form, right? And you just said, almost anticipated my question. You said you can push it into your data lake. But are you risking polluting your master data with unverified or, let's say, hallucinatory data, that's coming out of ChatGPT? So how do you prevent this actually starting a new cycle of poor quality data going through? And let me add one more thing too. When you pull the data, let's say you say, here are the principal firms that are involved in that litigation, do you match that up to the master data that you already have?
Very good question. A couple things. We're at the cusp of this, but we have already anticipated a validation layer and still the responsibility to validate. But I think if any of you write a lot, it's easier to edit than it is to create. So I think validation has to be in it to have responsible AI, period. And we're thinking about how we would approach that across the case teams. Second question, I think, is we're going to match it up to what we already have. One thing we didn't talk about was this beautiful thing that the team at BakerHostetler created, and it used even our legal researchers and those inside of IS that have acute understanding of the legal system, and we created this master court code key. And the key was a compound element, case and cause number and court ID, and we could, with that, whatever party of information sent us information, Bloomberg, Westlaw, Lexis, could be from this source now, we could unify it and say this is the same one case. Because imagine all of those cases, we had duplicates in our system, in our court docket, we had duplicates. It's called CompuLaw, an internal system firms use for liability to make sure our courts show up on time. There were duplicates in there. So I think we will have to, get over that hurdle, but I would assume it's going to be very, very similar to that. But yes, we want to build the bigger mountain, and we want that mountain to continue to grow, and I anticipate that it will, because right now we are pumping more information into it. And so I think there's also the other side of it is that some of these case teams that are dealing with 50 cases a week, these are your high volume litigation. Not every litigation book of business is like that, but the high volume ones are in the need of most help because they're under time pressure. Within 1 week, we have to get the case information, absorb it, and then we have to go back to the client and recommend a settlement or a litigation strategy, and then they have to approve it. The longer that time takes, the more money our clients risk because we're not out there settling if that's the trigger. So anyway, I hope that helps. Maybe a little more than you wanted. I could talk days about this. Please.
So you talked about trust at the beginning quite a bit with your the pitches that you were doing. Can you talk a little bit more about the trust you had to build with the attorneys to essentially take on a task that they've been doing possibly for 20, 30 years and just hand that off to a computer?
Well, number one, we don't just hand it off, but I get where the perception could be there. Yeah.
Right.
And, I have litigators in Chicago that probably at the time, his gut instinct, 30 years of experience, was probably better than what we had. And that's probably true. I mean, he knew Chicago. I mean, Chicago's different anyway, but the judges and the reaction and what's going to happen and so on. But I think part of it was we had leadership in that group that was like, please, help us, and we'll do whatever you want, right? Do you want us to tag information we didn't have? But I think that the journey's hard when we were in it, showing them like how you might use this or why. But the second that we walk into a major pitch, other firms, we're 59 out of 100 in the AmLaw 100, which is an important ranking. Everybody wants to be number one, but we're not quite there. We're at 59, and we hold steady there. And there are top 10 right next to us pitching, almost at the same time. And when we show this topography of their litigation, I think, and the client's reception to that, like, where has this been? Then they start to understand it can't just be me singular as an attorney. It can't just be our team singular. It has to be from a firm-wide approach. Now, they quite don't understand exactly how we do all of that, and that rests on us. But I think it's those quick wins that we really had to seek and just chip away at it. There's really no magic to it, but I think once they see those quick wins and they see how clients perceive it and see the value. Now, every corporate legal department inside of these companies have data initiatives, and now we speak that language with them. And more importantly, I feel like we've spoken it for a while, they speak it because they're hearing it from their CEO and CIO, and we can help elevate them to ensure that they're using good data for the legal department in their transactions. So I think there's that intersection where this all comes together, in my opinion. Yeah. It is a journey, though. Any other questions? I feel like there's a drawing coming up, so I think the students are ready. Uh-oh, did I say something? Oh, we're a little early. Okay. Please. Yeah, let's talk about Copilot. So what you just saw here was innovation that was done in Azure AI Studio, and we're also looking at Copilot Studio, not to be confused with Copilot M365. So Copilot M365 is really the productivity application layer and the use of Gen AI. What we have done is we have brought in, our innovation team has helped build guidelines in conjunction with our general counsel, and we brought in an early adopter group. So what they're doing is they're testing almost 100 use cases that we plumbed out of the business. It could be RFPs on the operational side. It could be on the other side of the house in the practice, specifically creating case timelines, or a variety of other things like summarizing depositions, which is part of that litigation process we just looked at. And so what we know with Copilot Studio is that we're getting a positive response. We have about 200 licenses deployed in our organization. We are not going to be the firm that just throws them out into the business. We are going to make sure that you give us feedback. We're innovating with you. It's a very, very structured process. Not one person has offered to give their license back. And now with the Wave 2 announcement and some of the enhanced capabilities, I highly doubt that we will ever go backwards at this point. We know with Copilot Studio Copilot M365, that it hasn't been bug-free. We know, for example, if we want to summarize a 200-page deposition or transcript, probably not going to happen. And what happens is, I think there's this kind of, I forget the word for it, but it's kind of like dead in the middle. It reads the top, reads the end, but it is this long stretch in the middle it doesn't capture. And that doesn't give us the value that we need, because remember, lawyers have to be really precise. So we're looking at what it can do. So just like I think what we heard with Cleveland Clinic, we're not going to use this for anybody under 18. Well, we're not going to use this for any document over a certain page size, right? Because we know what some of these limits are. So we're testing that, seeing a good amount of adoption and increase. What we know is that prompt engineering is really going to be a key. Because even though we can come up with prompts and say, yes, this would be a good use case for RFPs, go forth, grab a group from marketing and from a few spots, when they get it, they're like, yeah, I don't get it. So we know that there's an opportunity for us to create kind of our own maybe few shot examples if we needed to build something customized to help promote the increase of accuracy, but getting out in front of them on prompt engineering, I think is going to be a big 2025 initiative for us. What else on Copilot? Anything else on Copilot that I'm missing that would be fun to talk about? I will say that Microsoft hasn't made it easy. I think we have a good team that's supporting us, but there are many Copilots. There's Copilot for the web, there's Copilot inside of PowerPoint, there's Copilot inside of what I love. Like, if you're not using this is what I use every day, copilot.microsoft.com. That interface grabs everything in your data estate that's accessible, let's be clear, and it will allow you to, help you with email, help you write emails, it will help you, create agendas for upcoming meetings and different things like that. So I often talk about everyday AI versus game-changing AI. What we showed up here, I think, is game-changing. Everyday AI will give us pennies for the dollar back. And for a legal business, we go by time. Every 6/10 of the hour has to be written down and charged. So if I can take out some of those non-billable tasks, They have more room to build, more room to serve clients, more room to focus on clients and help them with where really their expertise comes into play. So I think in 2025, 26, we're going to start talking about impact of pricing. As you gain efficiency, what does that look like? That's going to be a big deal to professional service industries in total. And I think that's going to push that conversation along. I will say this, beyond just Microsoft's, I'm going to say M365, Copilot M365, 80% of our time is going to be consuming Gen AI through our vendors. So we have created this very structured vetting process. We will ask them 150 questions. What model are you using? Where's the data being stored? What does your agreement look like with the large language model provider? Because now we don't have privy, meaning contractual relationship with the large language models that they're using to support those products. So we need to understand what's going on and who owns those rights of the output. And literally we've had vendors tell us that, they own the output. Well, that can't happen for a law firm. So there's, contractual issues with them. But I will tell you that we had a recent study under Vincent AI. It's owned by VLEX. It's another research provider that performed super well in this way. You'll like this story. I had a researcher come to me and say, listen, I think I could use Vincent AI to help me with this. It takes me an hour today to be able to take up a settlement agreement, pull it from the docket, and analyze what the cost is per week for that settlement cost, because these calculations are long and in-depth. Vincent AI went head-to-head with his manual process and improved his efficiency by 75%. It was only wrong by 1 cent. And when we looked a little deeper, it's because Vincent AI did not round, and he did. So that was compelling. And I think as we get into Gen AI, we will be looking at very, very specific tasks. It will not be this large agent for the whole firm. I think that provides like little value for us. So it's going to be focused on very discrete tasks. I think we have a question here, please.
Regarding key stakeholder buy-in, as an industry innovator, how did you demonstrate that to your key stakeholders in regard to, hey, we need to make this process change now, otherwise we'll be behind the curve?
I love that question. Thank you for asking that. It's one of my favorite stories. As a director at the firm, I never had like real direct conversation, sometimes but not often, with our chief operating partner and the chairman who I report to today as the CIO. So I remember I came in 2 years ago. That was right when ChatGPT, the product, OpenAI's large language model, was kind of out to the public. And here I'm transitioning in to the CIO role. And I remember going to our chairman and saying, we need to do this together. And I want you to be along for the ride on this. And here's what we're going to do. Now, in 2015, we had created a process, an innovation framework that we still use today. So it was a rinse and repeat. What we did for machine learning, we are now doing for Gen AI. And so we already had a framework. So I put the framework in front of him. And I said, the first step is we got to get our arms around it. We need to know what it does. And I need to tie it to business outcomes. And so we brought in, through Microsoft, they helped us find providers that were smarter than us and could teach us a whole lot. And we held 2 Gen AI masterclasses. And the chairman and the chief operating partner sat right in the front, in the middle. And they taught us what it was and all these nuances between few-shot vector databases and semantic kernels. I mean, they were there for the whole ride. But we structured it in such a way that we said, now that we know kind of what this might do, how do you think this will impact your business outcome, or what business outcome would you like to target? So we got things like, helping to formulate our strategic plan, because our new chairman in 2020, first time, released a 5-year strategic plan for everyone in the organization to see. So that was in his mind. RFPs came from the chief operating partner, and a variety of other things. And so those initial, I think we grabbed about 90 or so business outcomes from that one day. And a lot of our people were there, right? And helping to participate side by side with leadership. And we put those all over the walls. We captured them. That is a running spreadsheet that we have, and it has grown to well over 150 now. And we are putting next to that What's performing well? We think 42 out of all of those are probably going to be good for Copilot M365 and or Studio and or maybe Azure AI, open AI services in Azure AI Studio, and we're evaluating those. So it's provided really great structure for us. But I would tell you this, not having that opportunity, I would say don't get too far out over your skis. I don't know how many times I've had to tell the team, slow down, leadership's not there yet. Because when I work with our general counsel, there are courts coming out with rules about not using it or using it. USPTO says, don't care, we're not gonna write in, that's mainly for all of our patents, trademarks, copyrights. USPTO says, we're not gonna write anything new because everything that we've told you about so far, you still have to abide by that. And if you do that, you'll be fine. So we were watching courts, we were watching states come out with rules, and that is a really important piece. Innovate, but you can't get to production without leadership, in my mind, because you could cause, in our organization, highly regulated, you could cause ethical violations. And I think every industry, every company is going to have to face some level of that. So leadership has to come in at some point. That's a very important piece. If it's nothing more than saying opportunity, because I'm big on being optimistic, excuse me, but also balanced with here's the risk, and this is why you have to pay attention. Or tell me you want me to delegate, you're going to delegate, and I'm going to work with this person to assess the risk. That could happen too, and that's somebody that they trust and feel you're going to come to the right conclusion. So I hope that helps. All right, that's it. Okay, thank you.
So, welcome everyone. Traditionally, I've been up here a lot more, but this year I've been behind the scenes, so it's fun to be back up here for just a few minutes and give my perspective on everything that's happening. So, what Catherine does not know is that my family and I also made a trip to the Sleeping Bear Dunes this summer, and we climbed that sand dune, and then we started in the direction of, and I hate to correct you, but I do have to correct you, Lake Michigan. Yeah. But it just shows you what a visionary you are, because you were thinking all the way to Lake Erie rather than Lake Michigan. But it took me back 50 years because when I was a young boy, my family went. That was my father and mother and my older brother. And every year we would make that trip to the Sleeping Bear Dunes, my father and my brothers. And we'd climb up the first dune, and then depending on how old we were and how fit we were and everything, we would make our way. And one year we actually hiked all the way to Lake Michigan, hiked all the way down, all the way around, and came back. And it was an all-day affair to do the hike. And at that time, it was not yet the Sleeping Bear National Park. It was just a Michigan park. And 50 years later, they've added so much more to it. It has infrastructure, it has trails, it has multiple opportunities for various different use cases with lots of stuff for families. And we saw lots of people there with young kids. And we saw there's another place along the lakeshore where you can hike all the way down, but it's so steep that there's a warning there that says, if you get stuck and have to be evacuated, it will cost you several $1,000s. And I'm happy to report that my nephew and one of my nieces actually did that hike down and back up. That was very impressive. And they did that. So what's the point of what I'm saying? Over the 50 years, there was foresight to take that relatively undeveloped area that was beautiful and figure out some good use cases for it, to put in the trails and then open that up for people to use it. And it occurred to me that that is very analogous to what we've heard today. That is to say that you are, especially the people who are in leadership and people who are involved in governance, you are thinking about how to make the trails. You are putting the pathways out there, and then you're saying to your users, you can now follow these paths, and you can follow them in ways that make sense to you and in ways that bring you an ultimate benefit. But by the way, if you go off that cliff and try to climb back up for the $1,000, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. So that's another reason why we as the data governance put the sign up there to warn you and to make sure that only the people who really know what they're doing are doing those things. So, so that's kind of what I took away from it, and I thank Catherine very much for giving me that analogy. And for everybody here, I have to say this has been a wonderful, uplifting event. I hope everybody walks away with a couple of great ideas. We will have videos that we've been taking of the presentations as soon as they get processed up on our website. So if you need to refer back, and if you need to get in touch with the speakers or anything, you can always come through us. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. We hope to see you next year, and thank you for a wonderful experience.